Every time I sat down to play the Wonderful 101, I was convinced I was going to have fun every single time. It's colorful, it's inventive, and it really wants to please. It's desperate to please. Unfortunately, I kept getting hung up on, well, basically everything else. The Wonderful 100 is an international team of superheroes. They're trying to fend off an intergalactic invasion from the Geth Jerk. They're led by Wonder Red, who has the power to form into a giant red energy fist made from the other members of the team. All the powers are like this. Like Wonder Blue makes an energy sword by members of the team standing on one another's shoulders. You activate the weapons by drawing a shape either on the gamepad screen or with the right thumbstick, and unfortunately it rarely works right. I'd try to draw a curvy S shape for the whip, and I'd get stuck with claws, which are more of a Z shape. There are so many different shapes to contend with that it gets pretty frustrating, and it's even worse when you have to draw around the side of a building or around enemies. It's also really hard to tell what's going on a lot of the time. There's 100 people in the Wonderful 100, so the screen gets really cluttered, especially when you add a ton of bad guys. A lot of times the camera won't show you enough, so you miss attacks from enemies that are off screen, or it'll show too much. It'll zoom out so far that everything's tiny and you can't make out your team or the enemies. When everything's working right, it can be a lot of fun, but those moments are way too rare. Even when you're not fighting the controls, fighting enemies is way more frustrating than it needs to be. There aren't enough visual cues on which your attacks to use, and you have so many attacks. A lot of times fights feel like trial and error. What makes it worse is that every time you die, you have to continue, which hurts your overall score. That should make the game easier, but since continuing penalizes your score and removes any real threat, it just turns fighting into a chore. It feels like even more of a slog when you hit some of the 30-minute long boss fights that really start to pile up towards the end. The good news is that Wonderful 101 doesn't just include these action sequences. It mixes things up pretty frequently. You're called on to man a turret. You even pilot this weird drill. A lot of these diversions are a lot of fun, but they're not enough to lift up the whole experience. Presentation is another bright spot. It looks great, and it's really cheerful and colorful. Unfortunately, the dialogue falls flat with some really crummy jokes and cookie cutter characters. The image-obsessed female member, she's the only one on the team. The Confucius-esque East Asian member. I mean, even if you don't think they're offensive, you're at least going to think they're boring. No matter how frustrated I got, I never stopped wanting to like the Wonderful 101. There are these really amazing moments, especially when it starts playing with scale, but it's saddled with so much baggage that it never really gets off the ground.